Hey, welcome. We're about to dive into something pretty incredible, the invisible shields that are literally the only thing standing between all life on Earth and the constant raw power of the sun. So let's just get right to the heart of it. The sun, right? It's a gigantic, raging nuclear furnace. So what's stopping it from just, completely scorching our world into a lifeless rock? Well, the answer is this amazing multi-layered defense system. The funny thing about the sun is it kind of has two personalities. On the one hand, it gives us all the life-giving light and warmth we need to exist. We literally couldn't be here without it. But on the other hand, it's also constantly blasting us with some really nasty stuff. We're talking dangerous radiation like UV rays, X-rays, and a relentless stream of charged particles. So why is this radiation so bad for us? Well, on a biological level, this high energy stuff can literally shred our cells and damage our DNA. And our DNA, that's the fundamental blueprint for all life. So yeah, without some serious protection, complex life just wouldn't stand a chance. Okay, so how does Earth actually fight back against this constant onslaught? Our first line of defense is something straight out of a sci-fi movie. A planet-sized, totally invisible force field. And this force field has a name. It's called the magnetosphere. And it's not magic, it's pure physics. Deep inside our planet, there's a liquid outer core of churning molten iron. This constant motion acts like a giant generator or a dynamo, creating this massive magnetic field that stretches way, way out into space. Now, this shield has three really critical jobs. First, its main gig is to deflect the worst of those charged particles, which we call the solar wind. Just picture a constant, high-speed gust of tiny particles blowing from the sun. The magnetosphere just pushes most of it aside. Second, by doing that, it protects our precious atmosphere from being literally stripped away into space. And third, there's a really cool side effect. Some of those particles get channeled down towards the poles where they slam into atmospheric gases, causing them to glow. And that creates the spectacular light shows we know as the aurora. But the force field isn't perfect. Some radiation still gets through. So, what's our next line of defense? Well, if the magnetosphere is our force field, you can think of this next part as the planet's armor plating. We're talking about the atmosphere, of course. Just think of it as a deep, multi-layered blanket of gas wrapped around the Earth. Its job is to act like a massive filter, either absorbing or bouncing back huge amounts of that incoming energy before it ever reaches us on the ground. And this blanket isn't just one simple layer. Nope. Different parts of it specialize in stopping different threats. Way up high, for example, the thermosphere is great at soaking up the most powerful X-rays. But a little lower down, in the stratosphere, that's where we find a really specialized protector. So let's zoom in on that special protector. You could call it Earth's ultimate, all-natural, high SPF sunscreen. You've definitely heard of this one, the ozone layer. Now, it's not a solid barrier or anything. It's really just a region within the stratosphere where there's a much higher concentration of ozone gas molecules just hanging out. And its mission is absolutely critical. The ozone layer has one single vital job: to absorb the vast majority of the sun's harmful ultraviolet or UV radiation. This is the stuff that causes sunburn and, on a much bigger scale, can seriously damage life at the cellular level. So these shields are clearly essential. But what happens if a planet doesn't have them, or maybe even loses them? To see the consequences, we just need to look over at our next-door neighbor in the solar system. This quote really says it all. The protection from our atmosphere and magnetic field, that is the fundamental difference between our vibrant living world and a barren, exposed rock like the moon. The difference is just stark when you compare Earth to Mars. I mean, look at this side by side. Earth has a strong magnetic field and a thick atmosphere, and the result is a thriving, protected planet. Mars, on the other hand, has a very weak magnetic field and a super thin atmosphere, which leaves its surface barren and totally exposed. And here's the tragic part. Scientists believe Mars wasn't always like this. It likely had a thicker atmosphere and liquid water. Our rovers see evidence of ancient riverbeds everywhere. But because its magnetic shield failed, the relentless solar wind just stripped away most of its air over billions of years. And without that atmospheric pressure, any liquid water on the surface just boiled away into space. Okay, so let's bring it all back home and quickly recap this amazing layered defense system that keeps that exact same thing from happening to Earth. I like to think of it as a gauntlet that all that dangerous radiation has to run to get to us. First, the charged particles are deflected by the magnetic field. Anything that gets through then has to face our thick atmosphere where it gets absorbed. And finally, the most dangerous UV rays are specifically blocked by the ozone layer. And the key takeaway here is that these shields don't work in isolation. They are one interconnected, dynamic system. They all work in perfect concert to create and maintain the safe, stable environment that has allowed complex life to flourish here on Earth. Which leaves us with one final, fascinating question. We've seen what happened to Mars when its shield failed, so if Earth's magnetic field were to weaken significantly, what do you think the first consequences would be for life down here on the surface? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.